Are you going to introduce us today, Sanil, or should I?
Why don't you do it, Dan?
Okay, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. And here we are with another Xcession podcast, everything service management episode. Really pleased today as we've got a special guest, Tim Mills from the ITSM People, and we'll allow Tim to give a quick introduction in just a second. But as always, I'm here and joined by my colleague, Sanil.
Hi.
Tim,
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Just for the audience, if you could give us a quick introduction to yourself and then perhaps tell us a little bit about ITSM People, who they are, what they do, and so on.
Sure, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, first and foremost. So my name is Tim Mills, as people have probably guessed by now, and I've worked in service management for too many years to mention, 25 plus years, and I've had a company called the ITSM People for over 10 years. And as the name suggests, we are specialists in IT service management. We have a reasonable sized team, all based onshore in the UK. Highly experienced. We do a lot of process work. We do a lot of people work. In fact, I'd suggest that we try to focus more on the people aspects of the process work than the process work itself, or the business change type activity and so on. Got a great team. Some of them actually contribute to ITIL and the ISO standards themselves. We've got some big clients. We also partner with the Service Desk Institute. We handle a lot of their ITSM consulting work. I think I could probably talk for half an hour about that, but let's stop there, and then we can get into some more questions maybe in a short while.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on some aspects about kind of the who, what, where, and why throughout. Sunil, do you want to kick off with the odd-numbered questions as our usual format?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for that intro, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Tim.
So there are lots of synergies, it strikes me, between Xcession and ITSM People, albeit we focus almost exclusively on the tooling elements. We work with similar customers, or similar types of customers, I should say, and I'm sure that those customers have similar challenges. So perhaps, as a sort of opening gambit, I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing with your customers in the ITSM, ESM marketplace.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with ESM actually. So I think, if you rewind 2 years, ESM wasn't really a particularly popular phrase, albeit myself and some of the team had been talking for quite some time about, there's no reason why we can't use this as a blueprint in other areas, whether that's HR, finance, and so on. So if you're consuming a service, there's no reason why incident can't work and request can't work and so on and so forth. And that's becoming more and more commonplace, I guess, which is a good thing. And I think the obvious target areas for enterprise service management are, as I've just explained, if you're consuming a service, then you probably need some sort of ticketing system rather than email, the classic pain in everyone's sides in terms of trying to run a service. And also the obvious one is live chat, chatbots and that kind of thing. Again, if you're running a service, it's a way to interact, queue the tickets, queue the calls, and all that kind of thing. So I think that's probably been the obvious area focused around ESM. But we're also seeing that develop further now. In fact, we've got 3 CMDB projects either running or under discussion, which are nothing to do with IT assets. So we're now seeing, so other areas that maybe we wouldn't have considered before part of enterprise service management, but actually, and I'll give you an example. So we're working with, or we're just about to start working with quite a big university, and they need a way of understanding the relationships between their assets. And when I'm talking assets, I'm talking buildings. So air conditioning units, what classes are you running in those buildings, and to understand those relationships. So if a building burns down, what's the impact of that? What students would have been attending that building, or if the air conditioning unit goes down and so on. So it's all about understanding a relationship. So I guess that's quite a powerful example of where else we can start applying service management into maybe areas that we didn't really consider before. The obvious ones, the incident and request management, right? But there's a really good example of other areas where we can apply it as well. In terms of, does that answer your first question around ESM, by the way?
Yeah, I mean,
delve into that further?
It's interesting because obviously people have been talking about ESM since the year dot almost, but it hasn't really taken off. But it sounds like you're saying that actually now organizations are really starting to see the opportunities and not just the benefits, but how they can achieve those benefits. And by the way, we're seeing the same thing as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a lot of banging the drum still required. So I think when clients have approached us or via one of our partners, such as the Service Desk Institute and so on, they don't really know what. They just know they've got a problem. And then we'll talk to them and say, well, have you heard of this thing called a CMDB? Or have you heard of asset management? And then we start telling them what that is, and they go, well, that's what we need. So they're not necessarily coming to us saying, we need enterprise service management. They'll find their path to us somehow. And then we start saying, well, actually, there's all this great stuff that we've been doing in IT for many, many years. And actually, there's a bit of a cookie cutter approach to some of this stuff where we can also learn from it elsewhere in the business. And in fact, we're working with a really big bank at the moment where the same thing. We went in initially to do a technology assessment, maturity assessment, and a few people have kind of spotted what we're doing, and now we're moving up to the enterprise level a little bit more and talking about how else can we benefit from some of this stuff that we're doing in technology. But again, I think people are finding by accident at the moment. I think there's a bit more marketing of enterprise service management probably required.
Yeah, I certainly will come on to vendors in a bit, but there has been, I think, quite a significant uptick in the number of vendors talking about their platform. Yeah, and that's obviously them trying to, to address other areas outside of IT. We have a platform, it can be extended across any part of the organization where, as you described, there is a service that is being delivered.
Yeah. And obviously ServiceNow and some of the bigger boys have been doing that for a very long time, right? You've got CSM and HRSD and all that kind of stuff. But there's some middle tier tools now as well that are getting pretty good in the ESM space. But I think it's our job and the vendors maybe to push it a little bit harder so people understand it, because I don't think, let's face it, there's still a lot of people out there that don't know what ITSM is, never mind ESM. So I think it's about kind of understanding the kind of people they need to talk to, and then we help shape that that problem statement, if you like, into okay, well, actually, what this is it's ITSM or it's ESM or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's talk a little bit about ITSM then. So, we're seeing a trend, albeit it's not an avalanche yet, but it's a movement towards ESM across the organization. What are you seeing in ITSM quite specifically? Because as you correctly identified, that is in theory anyway, a very mature space for service management, people, process, tooling.
It is, but I'm going to contradict a little bit here. So we've put various blogs out on this, and there's been various topics of conversation over the last few months. We're seeing more of a need to go back to basics when it comes to ITSM. So, and what I mean by that, and I don't know whether people have just got distracted over the last 5 years with, or maybe 5 to 10 years, with COVID and the need for speed and DevOps and being agile and all that kind of stuff. But it almost feels like some of that really important, some of those traditional aspects of service management, incident request, change, problem, knowledge, catalog, all that kind of stuff, I think it's kind of getting neglected a little bit, right? So everyone's kind of going, yeah, let's be really agile, and not really keeping an eye on how many major incidents they're having, and are we doing problem management? Are we spending enough time on problem management? All that kind of stuff. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing, even though, as you know, we do a lot of assessments and stuff like that, and 9 times out of 10, maybe 8 times out of 10, there's a core set of traditional service management activities which are lacking. And typically that's around knowledge, catalog, incident, problem, change. Everyone, I don't know. There's a lot of organizations that still don't do change right, despite being around for a long time, right? So we're getting more involved in that old stuff than any of the flashy new stuff. I think it's like we're going full circle a little bit and going, well, hang on a minute. We know that all this other stuff's really, really important. but we've got to find a balance. And I think it is difficult to find a balance between ITSM and DevOps, for example. And it all depends where your risk profile is, of course, right? So it's got a sliding scale as to, you know, how much we use change management versus, you know, trying to be a bit more agile. But that's what I'm seeing. And I've been seeing that for a long time. But I think, you know, even some quite big brand, without mentioning any names, big brand clients that, you know, you expect them to be pretty mature, and you go in and start poking around, and you're like, you know, let's just take things back to basics. Let's take a step back and think about, let's put a bit more effort into what we're doing around knowledge management and self-help and stabilizing the service, because ultimately we're not doing enough problem management. We're scoring home goals with not following a change process. And, you know, I've lived in ITIL and stuff like that for many, many years, and you have to be pragmatic about how you apply it. But I don't think you can overlook the importance of some of that, you know, some of that stuff. It's been around for a long time. It's really, really important.
Do you think then, Tim, that sort of like from what I'm hearing is the fundamental aspects that underpin all of these things are this kind of distraction factor, like you mentioned, like agile comes out. Well, we've got to be agile, and it's a new shiny thing of some description, you know, DevOps and Docker containers, and people sort of go, well, which direction do we need to go in? And the processes that we've been talking about just now not get left behind, but the amount of attention to those and care and maintenance and so forth, it becomes lessened because people think, well, we don't want to miss out on this new thing. It could be whatever, like a silver bullet type effect.
It could well be. It's probably a combination of things. You know, I think there was some stat or some kind of tongue-in-cheek thing that was going around a few years ago. You know, what was the thing that helped digitize your organization? And it was like cloud, or COVID. And it was COVID, right? COVID was the answer because it forced everybody's hands to do things faster in a different way all of a sudden. So I think there's been a lot more focus about being agile, and I think that's almost certainly diluted, or kind of people have had to keep a different eye on, you know, well, we need to go faster. We need to do stuff really, really quickly. So I think it's definitely a little bit of that. And of course, it's just attrition of staff. You know, sometimes we'll go into an organization, they don't need new processes. The processes are great. Practices, obviously we call them now, they're great. They're just sitting in a SharePoint and nobody knows them anymore. And you just think, right, let's take that 30-page document and let's turn it into a one-pager. And let's do some comms and re-educate people a little bit. So it's not that you need to reinvent the wheel here. Some of it's just about dusting stuff off and reminding people why some of this stuff's important.
No, absolutely. So sort of moving on and noting, Tim, you sort of deal more with the people aspect, but obviously you have a view on and keep an eye on the market in terms of the vendor base. And we've talked about how ITSM, ESM, it's a highly commoditized market. What sort of trends are you seeing there? What sort of differentiators are you seeing there, if any kind of standouts? You've mentioned ServiceNow, but they've been doing ESM for a long time, and sort of the middle market players, if you want to call them that, they're kind of introducing that talk track. What's been your experience? What can you share around that?
How do I word this?
Anyway, you
like Tim.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to upset anyone. I think, and this is not specific to ESM necessarily, it's ITSM and DSM. I think there's still a problem, and this is a real sweeping statement, right? But I think there's still a problem with vendors selling the dream. You know, we spoke before about this. The CMDB has always been the bone of contention for me. Like, you can't show people that without telling them how much effort it's going to be required to keep the thing, to sustain that thing that you've just showed them, you know. And so I don't think there's enough empathy with clients as to what they really need from the tool, and realistically, how much of this functionality that you're showing them are they really going to take advantage of? Can they afford to invest in it? Whether that's money, time, because it's all the same thing in a roundabout way. Because people just get sold the dream. You know, we talked about this, you know, when we spoke before. It's been going on for a long time, and I don't know, and I know that I say I'm tarring a lot of people with the same brush here, and that's a bit unfair maybe, but I still think it's a big problem. There's a lot of functionality. No. we get, as you know, we get we are agnostic from a tooling perspective, but we do a lot more with ServiceNow than any other tool, just because a lot of our clients use it. There's so much functionality, so much depth and breadth. It's brilliant, but a lot of clients just don't use it. And I've said it before on previous podcasts and so on. I do spend a fair bit of time trying to convince people that they don't need ServiceNow and they should be going for the middle tier. And as I say, I think this empathy is probably the right word. The vendors need to empathize a little bit with, right, what is your current state of play? Where are you going to be over the next, let's say they're looking to sign a 3-year deal or a 5-year deal on the tool set. What are we realistically going to do over that period to, what can you do as an organization? The vendor can do anything you want them to if your pockets are deep enough, but are you ready as an organization to take advantage of all this functionality? Now, CMDB is always a classic example of that, but there's obviously lots of other examples, and certainly, and I'm talking more ITSM here, obviously, because we get more involved with that than anything else. But I guess AI is the same, right? AI is going to fix everyone's problems. It's here, right? Here we go. And I haven't seen it firsthand, so I probably shouldn't comment on whether AI is being missold, but I suspect it's been spun as the answer to everybody's prayers, like the CMDB always was, and as we know, that's dangerous and it's unfair, I think.
Let's just hold on to that piece around AI for a second, if you don't mind. So I think there's a couple of points I would make to really back up, actually, what you've said there around vendors either overselling the benefits or the outcomes that customers can achieve, or maybe the flip side of that is not supporting customers enough to be able to achieve those benefits. It's probably 50 of one and 50 of the other. But we had a conversation, Dan and I, recently with somebody that works in an MSP. They're a sort of mid-sized MSP. And his view was that ITSM vendors are quite lazy. They don't spend a lot of time listening. They don't really spend a lot of time helping potential customers understand exactly, as you've just said, Tim, where they are on their journey and what is attainable and what the level of investment might be that they would need to achieve their objectives. There's not enough time and effort spent differentiating between other vendors, and they just sort of put themselves out there in the market because it's a growing market. There's more money coming into it, and that's probably enough to facilitate growth and an increase in ARR or whatever is there measured on. So that was a sort of anecdotal, but observational, I suppose, recognition of this. The other, though, is Gartner recently released their hype curve for ITSM, and they quite specifically in that report say that investment in ITSM is well known for customers not being able to leverage the functionality that they've bought. For want of a better expression, shelfware, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I think you're right, and our role as a sort of tooling partner is to try and help customers obviously do more with the investment that they have made. The vendor, though, often doesn't approach it from that perspective. The vendor's view is buy more stuff. A renewal is good, but not really what I'm targeted on. So whether you're using 90% of what you've invested in is really neither here nor there, right? If I'm trying to sell you another, 50% uplift with some more functionality, because that's what I'm going to try and do, whatever your situation. So I think we tend to agree with your view there.
I agree, and I agree that you agree.
Yeah.
I was with a vendor, a reseller, last week actually, and we were talking about assessments and all that kind of stuff. And I said to them, just out of interest, when you're onboarding a new client, what level of assessment do you do to make sure they're ready to be onboarded? And they were like, well, we don't We don't really. We just say, can you have your incident process? Can you have your change process? And can maybe your service catalog? And but there's no like sanity check, or maybe or maybe there is in a casual way, but there's no where are you on your maturity curve, and where do you plan to be? What are you doing over the next 3 years? Really important question, right? And can we underpin that? Most tools probably can with most organizations, right? But just it's a really simple question to ask, because then that helps shape a much bigger conversation probably, rather than just going right. And I've seen it before. We helped a few organizations almost police kind of vendor implementations and so on. And all the workshops are booked, right? Go, right, we've got all this time boxed in, and you need to come to all these meetings with all of your asset data, this, but there's no, again, tarring a few people with the same brush, but there should be more questions asked, I think, as to what level of functionality is going to be used. Now, that obviously doesn't work in the vendor's favor, right? Especially if they're just the vendor selling one tool, of course, right? If they're selling lots of different tools, that's great. You can just go, right, well, okay, well, we don't think this tool's right for you, but actually this tool will work for you. But a lot of vendors aren't in that place, right? Most will be specialists in tool X or tool Y or whatever, right? So I think it does put the clients in a bit of a dangerous position unless they're prepared and they've got the roadmap and then say, right, well, this is what we're looking to achieve. Can your tool support us on that roadmap? Not just where are we now? Have we got an incident process? Yes, but what are we doing over the next 2 to 3 years? And let's work on that journey together. And I think I think it's often overlooked.
There is one. I mean, we work with a number of different vendors, and we're not agnostic in the way that you are, but we are hopefully we work with enough different tool set providers to be able to take that kind of customer centric view, right? We don't think that investing in this tool will be right because you are not mature enough, you are too mature, whatever it may be, right? But one of the ones we work with is a fairly new vendor called For Me. What's interesting about them, and I know that I think you're spending a bit of time with them, but what's interesting about them is the starting point is not the process, right? It's let's define your services. If we can define your services, then that's the underpinning piece for the tool set, and all the processes that sit on top of those services, then follow suit. And what we have found is customers find it, certainly at the beginning of their For Me journey, extremely difficult to define what their services are. Now,
but it's absolutely the right place to start, right? It's absolutely the right place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you don't know what your services are, how can you make a decision around the appropriate tool for your journey, right? I mean, it makes it much more difficult, I would think, doesn't it?
It does.
But anyway,
no, it's a really good point, and I'll just to chip in on that. And I was just counting on my finger then, just doing some mental calculation. The last 5 organisations that we've been in that have got ServiceNow or a similar tool, top right quadrant kind of tool, hadn't got service catalogs. Yet they were paying the earth, or they got 5 application lists or whatever on a SharePoint site or whatever. It's nuts, right? It's like, and I say the service catalog is often the thing that comes up for us. So I think the approach with For Me is absolutely right, but I can see why people struggle with it. I mean, it's common sense. They shouldn't struggle with it because that's exactly what you need. That's the thing that underpins your whole service, like CMDB does, right? But the amount of people that haven't got any kind of service catalog, or at least not in the way that you would expect it to look, the mind boggles, right? It's always a bone of contention everywhere we go, right? Have you got a service catalog? Well, not really. It's like, well, how do people know what they can consume from you, and how do you know what you're delivering to them? So yeah, I mean, For Me's approach is bang on, but I can see why a lot of people would struggle with it, rightly or wrongly. They shouldn't struggle with it, but a lot of people do.
what we have found is once you give them a framework, I mean, and that framework actually sort of differs from organization to organization, but once you give them an idea of, look, this is how you can go about defining your services, then, and they get their head around that, then it sort of slots into place. But there's certainly an educational piece that comes right at the front end there, which is, this is what's important. This is how we're going to help you build out that catalog. But let's just head back to AI, right? Because you're right, AI is the buzz at the minute, and there is a sense, isn't there, that the market would have you believe that it will solve all of your problems. But what do you think the readiness is? I mean, I guess I've got an idea of what you're going to say, because you talked about going back to basics. But what do you think that the readiness is for the customers that you've worked with to really adopt AI capabilities? And I appreciate as well that there are lots of different AI capabilities, right? It's not just one thing. But to actually adopt those capabilities and to get some real benefits out of it.
I can only talk on my experience, of course. And as I've already said, we're doing a lot of kind of back to basics type work. We have come across AI chatbots and so on, over the years. My personal experience with it hasn't been great. In fact, we've helped a couple of clients rip out AI chatbots, and certainly one of them just said, get rid of it. It's just not adding any value. They'd been sold the dream. AI is going to answer everybody's queries and so on, and everybody just going around in circles, not getting an answer, couldn't speak to an agent, blah, 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 just driving everyone nuts, and everyone use chat. So we helped them rip it out and just put some real people behind it, just using a basic chat connect, chat support, whatever it's called, the old ServiceNow plugin, and everybody loved it. And the adoption went through the roof because they were talking to real people, right? So there's an example where, it didn't work very well. We have seen an example where it worked quite well, actually, last year, where the client hadn't got any chat solution at all, and we found a bit of middle ground between AI and real people. So the AI chatbot would ask you 2 or 3 questions to decide whether whether a first-time fix could be done, or whether a ticket just needed to be logged, or whether there was a knowledge article floating around that they could service you with. And depending on one of those 3 answers, it would probably offer you the article if there was one. If a first-time fix couldn't be achieved by a real person, I may add, then it would say, we're going to log a ticket for you and get someone to give you a call. Or if it deemed a first-time fix to be possible, it would connect you through to a real person on live chat. And that worked really well. And again, adoption went through the roof, right? Because people felt, even though there was a little bit of questioning, a little bit of scripted stroke AI questioning at the start, the impact, the user experience increased significantly. So that worked quite well.
So what would you say were the things that factored into that being a success, like that underpinned that? You mentioned that knowledge management, right?
Yeah. So, and it answers Sunil's question a little bit, I guess. And again, I'm only talking my experience. And anyone that knows more about AI might say, no, you're wrong, because it could do all this fancy jazzy stuff. But in my experience, unless you've got a mature knowledge practice and a bunch of documentation floating around, there's only so much that AI can actually do for you, because it's just looking for stuff that isn't there. Or that's my experience here right now. Some AI expert might say, no, you're wrong.
I think you're dead right there, right? Because if you look at something like ChatGPT, that's been fed millions upon millions of articles about who knows what, everything. Yeah, it's got all of that data to draw from. And it might get some of it right, might get some of it nearly right or completely wrong, right? But to the point about knowledge management, if the information isn't there for the AI entity to surface and look for things, then it's not going to be of any value. So you have to have that foundational data, the knowledge, to start with. I think that's dead right. And
it comes back to the
like you, Tim, I'm not an AI expert. So if there's any AI experts listening to this, feel free to challenge the views.
Yeah, and that is my experience, And again, it comes back to that good old back to basics. Let's make sure, have we got a knowledge solution, right? what are we doing about it? Have we got an ongoing activity? There's no point just setting up well, I'll say no point. There's every point in setting up some sort of database with a load of knowledge articles in it, but there's that ongoing activity, right? That's required, and that's the thing that always gets overlooked as well around knowledge management. And it's so important. It's so important around whether it's about the desk themselves or the techies themselves being able to deliver a service, or the user self-help, right? But it's just often overlooked. And so without that, well, yeah, you're kind of weeing in the wind, to coin a phrase, right? From an AI perspective, right?
Technical
there's another phrase, but yeah, there's another phrase, but I'll use the one that begins with W. So I think, yeah, it does come back to that maturity thing, of course. And another, I have seen it work reasonably okay around performance analytics. Yes. So again, problem management, big bugbear of mine, never enough activity around problem management, despite the fact we all know it's really, really important. And I have seen, I need to get an update on this actually. I tried to get one today to see how it's going, but I did see something that was working relatively well in ServiceNow. Again, you need the ITSM Pro license, I think, to access the performance analytics, but you know, it can go off, and can it do anything different to a human? You know, but you know, it's going to go off and do a bit of trending analysis for you and help you make some data-driven decisions. But you can do that with a person, right? It's not doing anything that a person can't, but it's probably saving you a little bit of time. So I know that that's out there as well. But you know, my experience of AI so far is limited. I haven't seen a great deal of benefit. In fact, I've got a negative view of it. But that's only because the clients were struggling with it, and we helped them kind of get themselves out of that, put some good old real people behind it, and everyone's happy, right? So I've got that slightly biased view, but I'm sure other people have got it working and doing some great things with it.
Yeah, we've got a couple of customers who have gone, have made some investment into it. One of them where it is working quite well is through a chatbot, but the chatbot is a route into their service catalog in essence. So you don't need to go to the portal, or I'm not quite sure what they call it, but let's call it a portal, and request something there. You can request via the chatbot. So if you go along and you get asked a bunch of questions about what iPhone you want, etc., you do that via the chatbot rather than via the portal. But it comes back to exactly what you were saying, which was, unless you have the basics, i.e. you know what's in your service catalog, you know what you can, fulfill or automatically fulfill, or have an automated process for fulfillment. If you don't have that, then the chatbot doesn't help you, because it just boots you to a person. Well, as we all know from trying to contact your mobile phone operator via the chatbot, if you end up with the person, you just get pissed off because you wanted to talk to them in the first place. You didn't want to go through the chatbot to get there.
It becomes an unnecessary step, doesn't it?
Exactly. So there are some use cases, but I think the point you're making here, Tim, and we agree with that, is actually, unless you have the fundamentals in place already, a good knowledge management process, right? Good data around problem management, so that your AI tool set can go and learn and then apply that learning to, other data, performance data as it comes in. Unless you have your services defined, there's no point just throwing some AI capability on top. It's almost inevitably going to end up in disappointment and some kind of rollback.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm going to contradict us again, right? I've just been thinking while you were saying all that. I do know of someone at the moment, and I can't talk too much about it, unfortunately, but it's really funny. I was smiling when you were talking then, because it's quite an amusing phrase. I've heard the lipstick on a pig one before, but this was rolling a shit in glitter was the phrase. I've not heard that before. And what they are doing, there's a longer term plan, strategy around tooling, but they know it's not going to happen overnight. In fact, it's a monster and it's going to take quite some time. So what they are doing, because they're under pressure to make some improvements in the short term, the thought process is they have got loads of knowledge articles around, and what's triggering all this actually is it's just so hard defined what you want. There's different intranets, different pockets of activity. And what the plan there is to use SharePoint or similar with integrate with an AI bot. So rather than you having to go, and so it will go and do the search for you, right, and pull it back. So, and it'd be really interesting to see how that works. They know it's not a long-term solution, but right now the time saving associated with having that in place, if it's set up properly, I think the difference with that is there's lots of knowledge around, but it's not all in one place. So it just depends where the chatbot, the AI can go and search for it, I guess, rather than stopping you needing to do that. So that it'd be interesting to see how that works, actually. But as I say, they know it's not a long-term solution.
Three key words in what you just said there, though, Tim. If it's set up properly, which again kind of loops back to the whole foundational aspects that we've kind of been a theme, rightly so, throughout this conversation. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the 3 words were shit in glitter.
Yeah.
No, well, that's a different. Yeah, moving on. So, looking to the future, could you give us a view how you sort of see this market space? Talking about the maturity levels and different organizations, what do you think may or may not happen in the next 3 years? AI kind of came out of nowhere, although it's been around for a while, but the hype machine really seems to have got behind it very, very recently with OpenGPT and everything that sort of stemmed from that.
Yeah.
Any kind of crystal ball predictions you could share with us?
It might be a controversial one, actually, and I'm not sure.
We love that. The more controversial, the better, Tim.
I'm not sure people that work on a service desk will want to necessarily hear this, but we know that whilst quite a few chatbots aren't overly effective, it's only going to get better, right? If people listen to this and go, so if we get the knowledge process working right, then we can take advantage of a chatbot, and it's going to become more commonplace, right? So then people start using chat more, hopefully less email and maybe less portal. They'll be kind of used to talking to chat. So I think it's obviously going to improve. There's no question, right? And how people implement it is going to improve. The thing that I saw recently is kind of scary but fascinating as well, and you might have seen it. Have you seen those? I've seen it on Instagram and so on, where people are talking different languages, like 10 different languages. It's the same person, but it's some sort of language model behind the scenes, and one they're talking in Japanese, Russian. How far are we away from being able to have a video call with a bot that looks a bit like me and you, right? Hopefully not too much like us because we're all bald, and so on. But
yeah, one with hair.
Yeah, maybe one with hair. How far away are we from having a conversation with a bilingual AI animated thing that can not only talk your language but go off and do everything that the chatbot is doing? Now, I suspect we're probably not that far away from it, right? Yeah. And what that ultimately means, sorry, service desk people, but that's going to take a few jobs away. I suspect, right? I mean, I don't. I hope it doesn't, but it's if you can talk to someone, have a video call with them in any language, and they're just going to do exactly what our chatbot friend can do, providing that the right knowledge exists, all important. Kind of stands to reason. That's probably the direction of travel, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the same use case, but one of our customers is their SAP Microsoft Dynamics partner. They operate in about 15 different countries. And the ITSM solution, actually, that we're in the process of putting in has an auto-translate functionality. So somebody in Belgium, for example, will, write some notes in the system because they've been talking to a customer. But that ticket might be fulfilled by somebody in Brazil.
Yeah.
And actually, it will. The person in Brazil sees everything that was written in French or whatever, right, in Portuguese, and they respond in Portuguese, and the person back in Belgium gets the response back in their natural language.
Is that ServiceNow, by the way, or
no, it's not actually.
Okay. That's the same as the language packs in ServiceNow, right?
Exactly.
It's no different. It's no different to that. And what we've actually done for a client last year, I think it was, we looked at, because obviously you can use dynamic translation depending on what licensing module you've got in ServiceNow. So same principle, chat service. You've got someone in French, you've got a man over there in Germany, and they can just chat, and it's just literally doing it on the fly, right? So no different, but even more dynamic, I guess. But that actually can be quite pricey, and we help to clients do exactly the same thing, just plugging in Google Translate API. So it gives you exactly the same experience, but really powerful. Where if you've got a global organization with 15 different languages, not all of those languages are going to justify having a team of people. It's very difficult. You might end up with 5 or 6 languages supported. So what do all those other people do? So, and that was a real big win for them when we said, did you know you can do translation on the fly and with live chat? And they were like, no. So all of a sudden, all those people that continue to send emails or get someone to phone on their behalf because they're not quite comfortable with the language, win-win, right? It's an absolute no-brainer. So all that language stuff is really, really powerful for sure. Yeah. But as we said, it's probably only a matter of time before that's actually a person, whether it's a phone call, like a more advanced IVR type character listening to what you say, or like a video call like this, where it's just an animated, I don't know what the right terminology is, right? But like an avatar of us, but looking a bit, maybe a little.
We've got a surprise you, Tim. We are avatars.
Yeah, you are actually avatars. Yeah. But surely that, with that use case in mind.
Yeah. Somebody will be. I'm sure if not already, somebody will be developing against that particular use case.
Yeah.
Can see it happening.
I think those service desk agents, they need to just, and I think this is the regular story with AI, though, isn't it? It's that, they might stop having that job to do, but there'll be other jobs that those people can be
free that up, and they could do more like a customer service type role, or whatever that is. It's it doesn't negate the need, but maybe some of that first time fix type or triage of tickets that maybe gets given to a robot of some description.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic, Tim. Really great to just conscious we've run to a good 40 minutes or so here. I'm sure there's plenty more we could be talking about, but perhaps we'll save that for another episode. Just want to extend my thanks for your time joining us today in the conversation. Sonal, I don't know if you've anything to add.
No, thank you very much, Tim. And if anyone listening wants to, get in contact with Tim because they need their back to basics assessment, I would heartily recommend it. So, let us know, or you'll find Tim on LinkedIn, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll put a link to the ITSM People in the comments, folks, and thanks for listening in.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Not just back to basics, by the way.
Sorry.
We do other stuff as well, but yeah, if you need any help with any ITSM stuff, come and have a chat, and we'll see where the conversation leads. But thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Hopefully, some of the stuff that we've talked about is thought provoking for those watching and so on. And we're more than happy to come back for another chat another day if you need me.
We look forward to it.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Tim.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good day.